Hello and welcome to a new type of episode on Morning Talk Show. Um, I'm I'm calling this being faithful to an impulse. I've been reading a lot lately about dreams and experiences that are outside of the norm. And through an interaction on Twitter, I discovered that one of my Twitter friends, I guess you could say, although we've never met in real life, had a very interesting and very strange experience with what he is describing as hyperdimensional beings. This is Mathew Hill, and he is, not a famous guy or whatever. Just he's a very good guy that I interact with pretty often on Twitter. And turns out on Sunday, the 5th of January, 2025, he had this very strange and I think extremely noteworthy experience. I managed to find out about it within a couple of days, and then on the 9th, we met for the first time over Zoom, and he told me the story. And I kind of applied my usual morning talk show ethic to it, which was that I was going to listen with the fullness of my being, as much as I was capable of, and then I was going to share of myself, which is kind of like, some people love it, some people hate it. It's kind of the way that I talk to people is that I invest myself and my own experiences into it as well. So I felt like I rambled because this is a new type of conversation for me. He seemed to find it helpful. And one of the things about Matthew's experience was that he did feel there was some request on behalf of these beings, and they seemed totally benevolent, to just express this, to just sort of tell people or to communicate what he heard in some way. So he was being faithful to an impulse. I was being faithful to an impulse. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now with UFOs, and a lot of people are dreaming dreams. And so I'm throwing this up on YouTube. It's not a normal episode. If it interests you, give it a like, maybe give it a comment, because I've been thinking about maybe doing this more, just getting people to share their paranormal, their psi, their woo, their spiritual experiences that maybe they are normally not feeling safe to share. So we had a little bit of internet trouble at the beginning of the conversation. I've edited out the humming and hawing and fixing part, but if you see an edit that feels a little bit arbitrary, there was no content missing. It was mostly just trying to make sure we had a stable connection that could keep going. Okay, so here's Mathew Hill and his experience communicating with hyperdimensional beings. Thank you for watching. So we don't know each other very well, or basically at all. But I always get like a sincerity from you on Twitter, and when you mentioned your incredible, I guess, dream experience of Sunday night, this past Sunday night, I was really intrigued, and I love the idea of hearing these stories, especially if it's like especially if it's helpful for for you to say it out loud, or, and to have somebody kind of like go back and forth about it. Like maybe you don't need me to be the one to do it, but selfishly, I thought that would be like an interesting conversation. And so, yeah, I'm wondering if you want to tell the story of what happened first.
Okay, so what's your name again?
Aaron. So Aaron Parker.
Aaron. That's right. Okay, my name's Mathew Hill. Oh, can you see
Yes.
that on the screen?
Yeah. Yours says
Okay.
Mathew Hill. And you're also you have your name, your own name as your Twitter. So sorry, I knew your name.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
forget, like when I've interacted with people so many times, that you don't know my name. And even in my podcast, I don't say my name. So that's a silly thing of me to do. But yeah, Aaron. I'm Aaron. I live in Edmonton, Canada. Not on a mountain, unfortunately. Um, and I've been, like, have a real interest in like spiritual matters, and dreams is something that's kind of been more recently of interest to me. I narrated an audiobook called Time Loops, which is about precognitive dreaming. And it's an incredible book about how we dream future events. Um, and so that's one of my interests um, in dreams. I don't have really cool dreams most of the time, but I have had a couple of dreams about these about UFOs recently, um, and that's what I guess sparked like you saying mentioning your experience. But yeah, is there anything
Interesting.
else you wanna you wanna know about me or talk about before you tell the story? I know it's quite personal, so I don't want to take it for granted that you know that you agreed to talk to me. Like I take it seriously, and I take it like I appreciate the vulnerability that it takes to do that.
Okay, yeah. So I've shared it with a few people since Sunday. My wife, obviously, my mom, grandma, couple of close coworkers. Interestingly, one of them was talking to me about dreams of UFOs that they had also um, recently,
Huh.
which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So I guess this happened Sunday night. I'll just jump right into it. At about 7 o'clock at night, I got like really tired. I normally stay up later. Uh, it was my it was my day off, and I had the next day off, so I'd planned on staying up probably pretty late. And yeah, 7 o'clock came around, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was like falling asleep, and I told my kids like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna have to lay down." I asked my oldest daughter to make dinner for me, and I just kind of went and turned the lights off in my room, um, lay down on my bed, and I couldn't sleep. Um, like I was laying there, and I was, like I said, really super tired, very heavy eyes. But I was not like passing into unconsciousness, um, which was a strange part of it. And I kind of laid there for a while. I laid down from about 7 to 9 o'clock, and the actual encounter happened very close to the end. Um, and so I was kind of just laying there for a while. I'd had a number of interesting occurrences while I was laying there. Like I felt like this, like I I I don't want to use the word like pressure. Um, it, it's kind of how it felt, but it was like a tension almost, like in my head, that was like trying to, I don't know, like push my thought to like a specific part in my mind. I've kind of had this experience before. I can kind of feel like when I'm falling asleep, I can kind of feel the shift in my brain patterns um, as they go down and I drift off into unconsciousness. Um, I'm pretty adept at paying attention to that, and I could kind of feel like my brain shifting into like a sleep pattern, but I couldn't actually sleep, um, and it felt very much like there was like almost this sweet spot in my mind I could get to where it felt very good. I don't know. It was very positive feeling. Um, but I had to kind of like it was like a balancing act. I had to play almost like getting the tension right on like a guitar string or something like that, like tuning an instrument.
Yeah.
And I did. I got into like this space in my mind where like I was very centered. Um, it felt almost like I was in like a sanctuary of some kind. And I do like practice meditation and stuff like that. But it wasn't quite the same. I and there was this like really strong like golden light coming out of like the vision in my mind,
Mm,
when I was in this like centered part of my mind. And it felt very much, like a sanctuary. I was in this space and I could almost see or feel the thoughts, my thoughts outside of it.
mm,
Um, but they were very distant from just like where I was existing in my mind.
mm.
And when I was in that space, that's when like this occurred to me. There was like a communique of intention. Um, like I felt these beings, I guess. I described them on Twitter as hyper dimensional extraterrestrials.
Okay.
That would be it. That would be a good way. Um, that would be a good way to describe it. I
And
think traditionally, yes.
sorry, hyperdimensional, would that refer to sort of like beings that could be in like could enter multiple dimensions? Or what it
Yeah,
like
like
it's not a word that I use. I've heard it, but I don't know that I've ever defined it.
yeah, like beyond like the regular dimensions of space time that we exist in.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And another question I had that I didn't want to interrupt you, but you could find this sanctuary, and actually a lot of my experiences lately have kind of tied into this. Like I know kind of what you mean about finding a sweet spot in your mind and certain things. I mean, in this case, it seems there was an actual attempt at communication that was driving you to a particular place. But I've had that
Seem like it.
feeling while going to sleep of sort of analyzing where I'm at, and then and going into like almost like hallucination territory, and then back out into rational territory, and like yeah, like
Yes.
I've definitely felt that. Were you and you said golden light? Was this an impression, or do you feel like you kind of saw that, or it sounded like you were still aware that you were in your room and you weren't
Yeah.
asleep? So there were
Right.
sort of
Correct. I was not
levels of
asleep.
consciousness at the same time.
100%. At any point in time, like at a number of times, I could open my eyes and just be in my room. Felt 100% normal. Um, yeah, uh, and I hadn't actually passed into unconsciousness,
Okay.
which is an interesting part. But it was kind of like very close to it, right? Like this kind of pre sleep. Um, you'll kind of get visuals and stuff as you're like kind of falling asleep. There's a
Yeah.
word for them.
Yeah. The
I
hypnagogic
forget.
state is definitely like
Yes.
it's something that is a thing. And I have had flashes, like that's something I've had a few times is flashes of what seems like light when I'm in the hypnagogic state. But it hasn't congealed into
Okay.
anything with a meaning for me yet anyway. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
this light, it was very clear. I could see it and bright, and it was shining out of my mind. Like I could see it in my mind. Yeah.
that's
I don't know. It was really interesting. Yeah. But it was after that happened that these beings had interacted with me, and um, they showed like it felt very much like they were showing me things, like a sharing type experience. Um, and they showed me like a lot of things. I can't articulate very much of it. But there's one specific thing that's very clear to me that it seemed like they wanted me to understand clearly. They wanted to show me how they thought, and like they showed me their thought, and they wanted me to understand how it is they thought. Um,
mm,
and so, and their thought was these really complex, like geometric patterns, and they were shifting in this specific way, and it was immediately related, like the shifting in these geometric patterns, uh, to shifting and an alignment of the planets. And there was a clear intention or communication, that they were relating the shifting of these patterns of their thought to how the planets moved. Almost like the way they thought was a mechanistic process. There were rules behind it, and what was moving their thought were these processes, or laws, just like the law of gravity moved like planets around the sun, let's say.
Okay.
Um,
So you
yeah.
mentioned that, yeah, in the tweet, and that, like, so did you get a sense that their thoughts were um, actually directly related or affected by the planets, or just that they moved in a similar way as the planets? You know what I mean?
So, right, yeah, yeah.
Like
It definitely
almost
there
like
was definitely
astrological, almost like astrological thinking, like versus like their thoughts just work in the same way. Anyway, keep going.
right. No, there was definitely a correspondence there, um, but the sharing of like the image of the patterns and then the image of the planets, um, it felt very much like a communication, uh, where they were trying to get me to understand like kind of how it worked, like
Mm,
almost at a level that I would take it in. There was a if there was a lot of um, a lot of feeling from them that they wanted me to understand, in a clear, concise manner, how they thought that these images I was seeing in these patterns, these geometric patterns that were shown,
mhm.
um, uh, were were a process, and not disconnected in a way from how we think. So,
You say they were or they were not disconnected from how we think?
so we're just very disconnected from how we think.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Where
There was a tiny
the way
cutout in
we
your audio.
think,
Go ahead.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah, the way, uh, in contrast, like my thought feels, in comparison, my thought feels very free. Like I can kind of think of anything. I can picture images in my head. I can
Mm,
go different places in my mind and stuff like that. And that there was very much a feeling like they couldn't do that. That the yeah, that the way they thought was almost like a program.
mm,
That they didn't have any control over it, and they had to like. There was a sense of waiting for this alignment to take place. And I saw the patterns come into this alignment, and then I saw an image of the planets come into an alignment. And one of the things, so that has lent a lot of credibility to me personally, because obviously this felt very wooey. I'm a very practical, down to earth type person. Um, I don't, I don't really believe in like a lot of like occult stuff or anything like that. Um, but I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with that.
that's okay. Well, so it felt very wooey to you, but it felt like, so when the you said when their geometric patterns came into alignment, then they showed you an image of the planets coming into alignment. Um,
And there's very much a correspondence between the two,
that's interesting.
right?
Um,
In this alignment, and okay.
no, no, that's okay. If you had a jumping off point there, go ahead.
So I remembered where I was going last night. I read an article that on January 21st and February 28th, there's going to be a planetary alignment.
Ah,
That 6 of the planets will align on January 21st, in the sky. And then on the 28th, um, all seven or of the planets will align in the sky and be visible.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That is, and you didn't know that before this dream. You found that
I
out
I've
after. Oh,
last night. I read an article about it and literally got goosebumps all up and down my body.
of course, man. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's wild. Um, I love this. I mean, I got goosebumps just now, man. Like to be perfectly honest with you, like I'm right here. I'm right here with you on this. Like this is not something, like one of my things that I can do is when I'm talking to somebody, I can put my skepticism completely aside and just be, be in it. And it's really quite something. Like I think it's quite cool and interesting. Now you say you're a practical guy, so I'm making an assumption, but I'll ask, is this like anything you've experienced before in your life?
No, never, nothing like this. I've had really powerful dreams. I'm an avid dreamer. Um, when I was young, I took psychedelics.
Yeah, I was going
Um,
to ask that too.
and yeah, and I have never experienced anything like this.
Mm,
Not it, it was it was really powerful. It was one of the most intense experiences of my entire life.
so, as this is happening, like one of the things that strikes me about even the way you're describing it, is that it doesn't sound like you woke up with a lot of ambiguity about, like, was something talking to me? Was it my imagination? Like, it doesn't sound like in your mind that was a big tension. Am I right in saying that?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Correct.
I put
I
stock in that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was 100% like I was in communication with another being.
That is so interesting. And like, just to kind of put words to it, like, um, the communication obviously was not heard. It would basically have been on the level of a telepathic communication. You didn't
Yes.
physically see the appearance of beings,
Okay,
or did you?
so
Yeah, that's a question. Go ahead.
the geometric patterns that I saw, it was their thought, but I also I had uh, the sense or the feeling um, that it was also like their body,
Okay,
um, if you could consider them having a body
sure.
in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
now, most of the communication was like through feeling and intention. Like I could feel, um, like yeah, it's hard to articulate, but
Yeah,
because there was no words of any kind.
right.
It was all just like a communication of intention and thought.
Okay. And so, y- I mean I totally accept that part of it, because that's, I've heard many descriptions of what communication, telepathic communications and that kind of thing feel like. And um, so it sounds like the closest things to images were these patterns. Is there any physical description of the patterns you can give? Like, what were they? Straight lines? Were they curved? Were they fractal looking? Was there color?
There was color. There's a lot of color. They were very fractal in nature. Um, it, I can't articulate it. I wish I was a good enough artist that I could depict it in some
Okay.
way, but I wouldn't be able to do that. Um, the two examples that come to mind the most are: have you ever seen Alex Gray uh, art?
No, but I can
Have
Google it
you ever
while
heard
we're
of him?
talking. I can check it out
So
here. Alex Gray
Yeah,
with an,
Alex Gray.
if it's
Um,
Grey or AY.
I Grey, I
Oh, here we
believe.
go. Yeah. got it. Okay, yes.
Uh-huh.
I've totally seen this. Yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He did the art for Tool, um,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that reminds me a lot of it. And then kind of like the image I've seen of like there's a meme, the biblically accurate
Oh
angels,
yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
there's those things with the eyes and the wheels that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of turning.
Yeah, sure.
That it reminded me a lot of that.
Oh wow. Yeah, so there was sort of a turning quality to it. Um,
Yes. It's
Fascinating.
like
Okay.
wheels within wheels.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking all this stuff up. And this is just like a total aside because you might be interested if you've seen Alex Gray, but have you ever looked up the art of Louis Wayne?
I
Um,
have not.
Louis
I'll
Wayne,
Google it.
check it out at some point. Louis Wayne is like this guy who, and by the way, by saying this, I'm not implying anything about you, but he was an illustrator, and as he, I believe, as he became schizophrenic, he kept drawing. He always drew cats. He always drew cute cats, but they went from being these adorable
Yeah.
cats to being these totally like very much like the art of Alex Gray that you showed me. So anyway, just a fascinating way of just a connection. It doesn't matter. That was a total aside, and I should shut up. But anyway, okay, so that's yeah, that's really awesome, and it does like obviously Alex Gray is inspired by psychedelics, I would say, uh, and
Mhm.
I have heard stories, you know, of kind of patterns and kind of like geometric things like that from people who have experienced psychedelics. When you had tried psychedelics, did you ever see anything like this stuff?
No, not
Okay.
no. Um, the closest thing I've ever had, so there was, oh man, a few years ago now, 2017, I believe I did go through a quite powerful religious experience. I had been converted into like a follower of Christ. Um, and I went through a high number of like kind of dreams, really, really powerful dreams,
Hmm.
and like kind of visions in my imagination that I had seen. I got I got really into meditation. It was a really strange time for me. Um, I uh, can you hear my kids? Is
Yeah,
it
I
loud?
can.
I'm gonna go ask them to. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Uh,
don't come down hard on them for my sake. It's not really bothering me, but I can imagine it's distracting for
okay.
you.
It is very distracting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have the same thing. I have
Um,
very high energy kids, but they're a bit younger, so they are actually in bed already. Otherwise, we'd have the same thing going
okay.
on here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My oldest is 15.
Okay. Yeah. My oldest
Um,
is
and
12,
yeah.
so
Okay. Okay.
they tuck her out
Yeah.
early.
They're going at it right now. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh,
Your
yeah.
conversion
So in about
experience.
2017, I had a really powerful religious experience with like a high number of dreams. But I haven't had anything like that. Oh, and I'd gotten really into meditation during the time. I was meditating for like maybe 14 hours a day, which kind of seems crazy. But it was like it was really intense. I was very focused.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and during that time, I had a lot of really strange encounters, but nothing is quite as powerful as this, and nothing where I was awake
Hmm.
either.
Right.
All of the most powerful things I'd experienced were clearly in a dream.
Yeah. Um, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. My impression of you is that you're still a follower of Christ today.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I guess I'm wondering if anything about this, it doesn't sound like it, but I'm wondering if anything about this kind of threw your worldview into question at all. Like if anything about this gave you pause that maybe your beliefs were changing, or maybe this didn't correspond with your beliefs, or there was nothing like that particularly?
Nothing at all. It did make me a lot more of a believer in kind of wooey things, I
Sure,
would
yeah, yeah.
say.
That's the way it
Yeah,
goes.
more esoteric. I kind of see it's really weird. I kind of see things more as energy now, um, which is interesting because there wasn't any like communication about that. Um, but
Right.
yeah, and that's the best way I can verbalize it. But
Mm,
I can kind of see things as energy rather than as like a matter material
yeah.
type. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of reading up on things like that. Like I read a book called The Flip by Jeffrey Kripal, which is about people's experiences that basically shake their materialism, and make materialism impossible for them. And and energy is something that comes up a lot in those kinds of yeah, discussions, like just the idea of things being energy, or sensing energy. Um, so nothing. So it wasn't anything that seemed like it shook your foundations of your worldview. Now, something that I feel like actually I already got an impression. I don't know if you saw this. Another person that I talk to on Twitter sometimes sent me, in response to something I said, sent me a video, basically with the implication that I've heard a few times, that these things are always demons. um, and
Okay.
and it isn't, personally. I trust what you tell me about it, and especially because
Mhm.
I know that um, the things I've heard you say about your faith and that kind of thing. Like I think I just don't think you're going it alone on this stuff. You know what I mean? Like you're accompanied by your
Mhm.
by Christ. Like that's a belief that I have, that I think is true of you, and that if you tell me is true of you, I'm gonna believe you on that. And so I guess my question that I think I already know the answer to is if there was any kind of feeling of manipulation, or of any mistrust that you had with these beings, or anything that made you feel there was anything negative from them. You know what I mean? Or anything they were hiding, or
Uh, yeah, yeah, no. I did not feel any manipulation. I did not feel any malice. Um, there was again this clear understanding that they wanted me to know that their thought was mechanistic in nature, that they did not have control over it.
yeah,
It reminded me very much of what I hear or what I've heard is that like an angel or a demon does not have free will.
right.
Um, and so that was my first thought of it. I would believe that if somebody had encountered this in um, like a more traditional setting, that they would have described it as an angel or a demon. Yeah.
Right. So, and you're not describing it as an angel or a demon, and that's fine. Is there a reason that you're not?
So I believe that just a hyper dimensional extraterrestrial. I think that's more concise.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. No, and as a person, like I would say that I'm in a long term. My path is a lot more breadcrumby feeling. Like I'm always jealous of people with these crazy vivid dreams, because I've just had a very different path, and most of my experiences of insight and creative imagination have happened while I'm awake. Like kind of like you were saying, this is your first awake one. You've had a lot of vivid dreams. So I was just asking about that, but I do support the idea of not labeling angels right away. I mean, I think if it'd be nice to know if it were a demon, it'd be sort of good for you to kind of know that as soon as possible. But it doesn't, like, honestly, it doesn't sound like it to me. I'm not going there. But it did remind me of the verse in First Peter. Let's see, um, where it says. the Holy Spirit who was sent from heaven gave them the power, and they told of things that even the angels would not know about. But that, I don't know if that's exactly the verse I was thinking of. I just looked it up. Anyway, yeah, the angels wishing they could have uh, our perspective sometimes on things, or we have a freedom that they don't have. And I think that's like something interesting. Yeah, no. So I don't want to go too far down that path, because if you're not labeling them angels, I don't want to continue on the conversation calling them angels or assuming they were angels. But it's kind of it's an interesting thought, right? Because I mean, I think we've all probably thought quite a lot about like people who are curious about these things have thought a lot about determinism, and just like how bound is someone, like the closer something is to basically pure um, pure being, you would think they would actually be more and more bound um, by just the nature of reality, because things that for you and I it might be a choice wouldn't be a choice for something. And again, I want to get away from angels, but I mean the thought of something that is a little bit less corporeal and more just integrated into reality somehow. Yeah, it would be forces like that, like that would move them. And obviously there was some intention, though. There was a little bit of an ability to commune with you at a particular time, and possibly for a particular reason, especially knowing there's these conjunctions coming up. How rare, like in the articles you read, how rare are these conjunctions? Like and I'm
So
saying conjunction, forgive me if I'm misusing it, but you know what I mean, the alignment of the planets.
so the 6 and 7 planetary alignments are pretty rare. Um, I don't know like the mathematics of it, like if it happens every so often. But the planetary alignment with the 7 planets is much more rare than the alignment with the six, and
Ah,
the alignment with the six is much more rare than the alignment with the five,
okay.
and so on and so.
So my
Yeah.
question is, do these end up being paired like this, like so close together? You said one's on the 21st, one's on the 28th. Like that's 7 days apart, 6 to 7 planets.
Okay, so the first one's in January 21st, and then
Oh,
the second alignment with the 7 planets is in February 28th.
oh, okay, sorry. Right. Okay, so
Yeah,
not a week apart, but basically a little over a month apart.
a month.
Um,
Yeah.
is that would sound like it would be even more rare, the 6 and the 7 being relatively close together. Like, am I right in thinking that?
I would assume so. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like it's pretty rare. Yeah, I mean enough that they had made a news article about it in some astronomy um
Yeah.
website or
Yeah.
something. I got it. I got it on Google on my phone.
Yeah.
Is where I found the article. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, um, was there any sense of like it sounds to me like it was difficult enough to kind of get you there, get your attention. Like somehow, I guess they must have identified you as someone who would kind of take the prompts. You know what I mean? Like that would accept the prompts you were being given. Like you took your tiredness, you listen to that, and like I am finding that it's something I'm noticing a lot more in life is noticing these smaller things, um, and things that your mind might want to dismiss as insignificant, and then once you were laying down, you were sensitive to the prompt of finding almost the right sort of um, like alpha waves or whatever that you were supposed to be uh, you know immersing yourself in order to get to where these beings could talk to you. So do you feel like there was a reason behind it, or that was just left for you to kind of figure out?
So the reason felt very much like they wanted me to understand how they thought.
Yeah, that's just that was the whole
That
reason. I
that
mean, it wasn't for a specific event or a purpose,
well,
necessarily. Or
so
go ahead.
there was also a clear feeling that they for whatever reason, I don't know why, and there wasn't like any warning or anything like that. It was just they had to wait for the alignment.
Mm.
It was
Um,
both in like in a correspondence with the planets, but also with these like they had to wait for an alignment of these geometric patterns that were their thought.
okay.
And I don't know what exactly they were waiting for other than just the alignment itself. But
Right.
yeah, there was very much a sense that they were waiting for this alignment.
Even so, they were waiting for the alignment in order to contact you this first time,
No,
or
I'm
that they're waiting for this
um
for an alignment to contact you again,
no,
or
I don't think so.
okay,
Just like yeah, just like yeah, it felt very casual. Um it was
okay,
almost like a friend sharing something with me
huh,
um rather than yeah, like you talk to somebody and you want to kind of just kind of share with them how you think and how you feel
huh,
about something,
yeah,
and you just want to convey a sense of understanding in that person, how you're thinking and where you're coming from.
yeah, yeah.
um, that was very much the sense I got,
Oh,
that
that's so interesting.
they just wanted me to understand exactly how it is they thought in this process, and that there was this alignment and that they had to wait for it.
Yeah, sorry, and so they are wait. They had to wait for an alignment in the future, or they had to wait for an alignment, right, to talk to you. Sorry, forgive me if.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of it wasn't very clear.
Okay, yeah,
Um, yeah, it it felt very much like it was something that was going to be happening in the future. That the shifting was occurring while they were communicating with me. Um,
okay.
Hold on, I'm sorry. My wife is calling me. Give me one
Oh,
second.
yeah, no problem.
Okay, so where was I? The alignment.
Oh yeah, just that there was sort of an alignment happening while they were
Yeah, it was
communicating.
almost like yeah, it was almost like the feeling I got. It doesn't make any sense though that they have to wait for it to think, or I can't articulate it very well.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, or maybe to act. Um,
yeah,
like, but I don't know. But there was a clear sense of awaiting this alignment of these geometric patterns in their
yeah,
thought, and it
interesting.
corresponding to an alignment of the planets.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can relate to them in the sense that sometimes I feel like my freaking thoughts are like, in very disparate
Right?
places,
Yeah.
and I have to wait for them to align to do anything. Like there are times where you feel like something's aligned. I don't know, and you're doing something. You're in some kind of a flow, and it's tough to get there by will alone. And so I can sort of
Right.
understand
For
the
sure.
concept. What I'm almost imagining is uh, when I think of planets. Yeah, I guess I just think when planets are all far apart, the actual feeling of um, distinct I don't know what you'd say, like almost a distinct purpose or a distinct ability to for gravitational fields even to align and create a more powerful force. When everything's really disparate, you wouldn't necessarily have that powerful force coming together. But when planets align, I mean, if we're feeling um, if we are affected by the radiation from the sun as far away as it is, there are definitely like there are definitely forces within the solar system and probably within the universe as a whole that get stronger and weaker. I mean, as the planets get closer to each other or aligned or whatever, like, and resonances is a good way to think of it. Um, so I can sort of understand how like there would be these beings would have certain times when they are just like more they're closer to a corporeal frame, or they're closer to the way our minds think, so that they can actually interface, or something like that. I don't know. I'm just going out on a limb here because what you're saying is giving me kind of images in my head, and it's a fascinating thought. And I put stock in your impression of what they were, of the casualness of what was going on, right? Because when we hear these things, I
Mm.
mean, we've been raised on Close Encounters and things like that, where you sort of you imagine the tone. I hear this thing and I'm imagining an almost an urgent tone, right? We've got this event coming up, and
Mhm.
like there's these now that these alignments, it almost I make a narrative in my head like, oh, these two conjunctions are coming up and we've got to tell you how we think and something important's going to happen, right? But it's like, no, you're saying it's just it was a feeling of casualness,
Yeah.
and that's cool. I mean, that definitely changes kind of the tone of the whole thing. And it does make me wonder if they were um, just, if the alignments just make them like able to interface with us, able to communicate with us because the energy is right, the resonances are right, between our consciousnesses and theirs, right? Because like
Hmm.
one of the thing, and sorry, forgive me, I'm not going to monologue forever, but it's just really stimulating lots of thoughts.
No, you're helping me a lot. I actually kind of
Oh,
think through my own thoughts. So this is very helpful.
oh, okay. Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because oh shoot, no, I lost my train of thought there. Um, uh, so I was saying, oh yeah, the tone of casualness that they're just feeling like they can align. Oh yeah. What I was going to say was one of the things you might be interested in reading that book, The Flip, by Jeffrey Kripal, um, because it one of the things it talks about is different models of consciousness that people are putting forward right now, and some people believe, as I'm sure you know, that like consciousness is actually the ground of all being, right? That actually we are in consciousness, and we as human beings. This is me now. I'm not quoting a text because I'm very much an armchair thinker about these things, but like that we as human beings are little nodes of consciousness, but consciousness actually pervades all things. And there are a few things that you can, there are a lot of woo things. I don't want to preach any one specific thing, but it kind of like, it sort of makes things like synchronicities feel a little bit less far-fetched when you think that sort of we are a part of a field of consciousness. And then it definitely makes something like um, what you're saying about these beings, that makes a lot of sense, because if they have a completely different type of consciousness that is in a way more expansive and has to sort of focus down before they can interface with us, it makes that seem a lot less far away. You know what I mean? It makes it seem like
Hmm.
almost less exotic in a way, because um, it's not like this Close Encounters of the Third kind of thing. It's just consciousness doing what consciousness does. And faith in um, faith in God, um, is under this lens could be sort of like um, faith in sort of the maximum consciousness, the consciousness that does include all and has intention, and is the reason for the morphic fields that cause DNA to form an arm instead of two arms instead of like 10 arms, or whatever, like that. It actually is all kind of like um, part of and integrated into just a consciousness so colossal that we kind of have to call it God or whatever. Which, yeah, again, it's not me trying to, because I'm a believer like yourself, so it's not me trying to explain away what God is. But yeah, those are the things that came to my mind uh, when you mentioned all this stuff. And if you have any reflections or whatever after that rant, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, so it kind of in my imagination, there wasn't any like communication about this, but yeah, kind of in my own imagination, I felt like the geometric patterns that I was seeing were almost like subatomic forces or something like that,
Mm,
like the thing underneath everything that kind of makes it all happen.
mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was like an impression that you took away. It wasn't like they communicated that to you, but you sort of took that away. Um,
right.
yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense. And another thing that's sort of difficult to, we used the word fractal earlier, and my impression of the potential fractal quality of well, of just reality in general and consciousness is that there is a sense in which scale becomes irrelevant. That they're like subatomic particles, and the movements of planets can be you know can have similar resonances, can have similar like um, scale is a function of the human mind relating everything to ourselves, if you know what I mean. Um,
okay.
and there's a series called I don't know if did you ever read The Wrinkle in Time?
No.
Well, A Wrinkle in Time, and forgive me for just throwing like books at you. I sound like I'm this bookworm, but actually, it's just there's a few things that kind of resonate that you might find interesting. A Wrinkle in Time is by Madeline L'Engle, and it's a series
I've
about.
heard of it before, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, there's three. I think there's three. There's three books, and they're supposedly intended for children. I read the first one when I was quite young, and it's really interesting, and I think you'd find it interesting. But the third book, A Swiftly Tilting Planet, I think it's called, or A Wind in the Door. Shoot, I think it's A Wind in the Door. Anyway, read the whole series. If you're a reader and it's not a daunting thing to read a series of books, I'd say read it because um, one of the things they do is in this book. There's these kind of witches. By the way, Madeline L'Engle was a Christian writer, so she was just really, really grounded in quantum physics and all this really interesting stuff, but also a believer. So like fascinating perspective that she writes from. But they go into a mitochondria, like they are shrunk down into a mitochondria, and there is basically one of the characters in the book is experiencing a um, physical illness and a shutdown almost of his body that nobody can explain. And it turns out that, and I'm just totally wrecking this, but his mitochondria in his body are shutting down. So they travel down into one mitochondria, and they have this whole drama. And you might find it interesting because it takes place in kind of a non-physical realm. It's all mental. But in this, they're communicating with the individual elements of a mitochondria in the cell, and basically rescuing like this one mitochondria. And kind of the idea is that scale, the idea that they're putting forward is that actually scale is not the um, scale is not the hierarchical indicator that we think it is. And so, like things that happen at subatomic levels can be just as important as things that happen in our lives, or things that happen in a much grander scale to the universe itself are also important. And that, yeah, I don't really know if that is relevant. I'm kind of free associating in a certain sense because what you experienced was so kind of outside of traditional experience. So I'm throwing the things at you that came to my mind in sort of almost like trying to honor the spirit of what happened and just put my own input into it. But
Mhm.
at any rate, is there anything I've said just now that stimulated more thoughts from yourself, or am I now too far out on a limb?
No, that was really interesting. You definitely got me get piqued my interest in reading A Wrinkle in Time. Like I said, I've heard of that before. I've kind of looked into it, but I've never actually read it. One thing I think is interesting, there wasn't any sense of scale. So the whole imagination that like maybe like these patterns that I saw were like subatomic forces or something like that. That's just my speculation.
Right.
Um, right. But yeah, there wasn't any sense of scale, but there was a sense, like I call them hyperdimensional, right? And there was definitely a sense that they were beyond like our our Cartesian existence in 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional space time or
Right.
whatever. Um, right, that they kind of like existed in and throughout all things.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I even think it's telling that there wasn't a sense of scale, you know? I mean, people who hear the story and hear that the alignment that they're describing in order to communicate um, relates to the planets, you know, the implication would almost be that their scale is immense. But you know, but then that's not necessarily the case. That's just an analogy that they felt would make sense to your mind, and it
Right.
clearly did
Yeah.
make sense. And so their alignments and even their movements aren't even necessarily movements in corporeal space. Like they're uh, something else, which is yeah, it's just so hard for the mind to wrap itself around. And they must like I mean, it seems like you have the type of mind that you're expressing these things very like clearly and as clearly as they can be, but recognizing that these things can't be expressed clearly. So, you know,
So
yeah,
that was something that came through. They very much wanted me to understand, and
yeah,
they wanted me to explain it in a way that made sense.
yeah,
That not almost in like the kind of Vervaekian way where like I'm making sense into the world.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, like it sounds to me like you're going to be like unpacking this for quite a while. I mean, uh, I'm personally quite invested in the story here, which I don't. My sense is that it's not over exactly, but it, you know, not that I'm saying you're going to be visited again, because who knows, but like just that something's germinating, right? That as you know, as you're looking around in the world and seeing the world in a different light, then different details are going to come out to you. And so, yeah, I'm very invested in continuing to hear what insights you get after this. Like, yeah, if we have contact on Twitter and stuff, so I mean, if you think about it, if you don't mind, just kind of like let me know, or even like if there's anything else, if there's like an update to kind of where this went, then I'd love to even chat again because that's really cool, and maybe I'll let you know too because there are things that you're saying that actually resonate with just personal experiences of mine that weren't the same, but in this frame, like even I'll just give you a small example. It's just yesterday. Right now, I don't have a job, so I'm trying to sort of catch up on some sleep. My wife and I are pretty behind on sleep. We tend to stay up and then not be able to sleep or have to get up early because of the kids. So yesterday, um, I had to take the kids to school and daycare, and it ended up being quite a long trip. But my plan was to lay down on the couch when I got home and uh, and try to sleep for a bit more. But I wasn't able to sleep. But I was for quite a long time in kind of that hypnagogic state where I was taking note of all these different levels, and I even had like there was one point where something kind of disturbing, actually not kind of disturbing, something very disturbing came into my mind in a way that was like not it was kind of forceful, and I was able to dispel it. It was a really dark thought, that wasn't practical dark thought. it, and just things like that resonated the most with what you were saying, even though I felt that your experience was quite different. I was laying like just literally right over there. And for at least 2 hours, doing this kind of weird dance of looking for the level of consciousness that would actually bring sleep, but not finding it, even though I was tired. And I had coffee, so I messed myself up. But I'm just saying, like, certain things you're saying, like, I feel like are resonating with me. And definitely, like, when I was, I don't know if you ever saw, twice now I've tweeted this dream I had when I was quite young. Let me try to think. I would have been about grade 5, fifth grade. I'm in Canada. We say grade 5. And in this dream, I had a fever, and I had gone to bed, and I had this super vivid dream. And my life is not marked by these dreams at all. So I know I had a fever, which, everyone would just say like this was not a important dream, but it's always stuck with me. So in the dream, I was in a black space, and the only thing present in that space was two spheres, and they were chrome. And this goes to that scale thing I was talking about before. So those two spheres started to go over each other. Started to rotate around each other like this, one over top of the other. And when they did that, a piano played. All of a sudden there was a piano there, a black grand piano, like very, very dramatic. It could easily be an album cover for like a prog rock record, two orbs basically, and this piano. And then I knew I was in a different place. The blackness was now the universe, like the cosmos. Basically, I was in space, and there were two planet-sized spheres that were going to move over each other like this. And and when they did that, one of the spheres was Earth, and the intention was to make this a piano, or this was my impression as a kid. A piano that was just like incredible size, like a massive version of the small piano. And the movement of these two planets would make that piano play. But one of those planets was Earth. And the planet, when everything began to go into motion, Earth was obviously messed. Like the people on Earth, including suddenly myself, were tumbling, and just like it was utter chaos. And I screamed in real life, I screamed, "I'm dying." And my parents came, and I was like, my sheets were all messed up, and my butt was up in the air, like I had been like flipping around myself. And so I'm going to say a year ago at least, possibly more, this dream came to mind as part of a series of little dreams that I had, I was having at that time. And I went on YouTube and watched a video of of a conspiracy theory about the Earth's poles, magnetic pole shifting, and the total chaos that it would cause. And watching this video, I had something I never ever had, which is like a real panic. Like I started to really panic, and I had to turn this video off. That never happens to me. Like as a person, I'm actually super hard to affect in the world. Like I don't panic. I barely panic sometimes when there is something to panic about, unless it involves my children, and then I'll panic. But I'll panic pretty easily. But yeah, there was a really weird panic response that I had to this video about the pole shifting. And then lo and behold, apparently there is a very good chance that our poles are going to shift and shift back at some point. We're quite overdue for it to happen. It's happened throughout the history of the planet. So at any rate.
Something that's kind of interesting.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Something that's kind of interesting I had actually thought about while we were talking, when I was talking about I didn't say anything about it, but the thought had occurred to me that when the planets are aligning, like maybe like the forces of like gravity or electromagnetism or whatever could cause the poles to flip.
You had that thought. Are you kidding
I
me?
had had that thought. Well,
Oh,
yeah,
jeez.
no,
You're not helping
I
me
just
out here,
didn't say
buddy.
anything about
Oh, jeez.
it.
This is not helping my fear of the polar shift. Oh, geez. Yeah. So I should
Yeah.
actually say that uh, the conspiracy theory that I saw on YouTube, I just want to clarify because if anyone ever watches this, the conspiracy theory was actually that the Earth itself would rotate 90 degrees, which is actually quite
Okay.
different from is different from a polar shift. But
You're
in
right. Yeah.
recent months, I just because of a little bit of online research, the actual polar shift, which is actually a different thing, and it will cause problems, but not to the scale that this actual Earth rotating by 90 degrees would have caused. But yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
good thing, and it's something that oh shit, yeah. I wonder if there's any possibility that these conjunctions coming up are could cause that to happen. Anyway, okay, well, there's a little bit of googling that I'm gonna do. That's that that is actually kind of weirding me out a little bit that you had a polar shift thought, and then I told you the
Yeah.
stuff, and that's kind of crazy. Anyway, okay. Well,
That is really weird.
I won't go nuts with that
It's
at the
something that
moment.
hasn't that was something that hasn't dawned on me until this moment when like back when we were talking about I was talking about the shift of the patterns and the shift in the planets and them aligning and
Hmm.
you were saying how like the gravity would like kind of coalesce together. That's when I had the idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And it's
interesting.
something that I never thought of. I didn't think of in the interaction
Hmm.
that I had, or yeah,
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, what comes to my mind first is that I truly don't know. Like, I truly don't know what the if the amount of gravity from the various planets is
yeah,
seen to be able to affect in that way. I mean, I was
right,
my intention, and it's true. Like, gravity is one of the forces, affecting everything. Obviously, having a huge effect on the movements of planets. But I'm even willing to believe there are other forces besides gravity that we're not so necessarily so attuned to. Um, like to put my cards on the table, I'm not a complete astrology denier. like there's a few I'm not a complete astrology acceptor, but I'm not a complete astrology denier because I I've had a couple of experiences with astrology that kind of had that feeling of just importance that um, is completely personal. Like you can't say that you can't use it as proof for anybody else. That basically birth chart astrology is something that somebody sent me a description of myself based on my birth chart, and I don't know how much you know about astrology. Are you kind of at all um,
it's
versed
something
in
I
that?
paid attention to,
Yeah,
kind of almost as a form of entertainment, but I haven't put a lot of weight
sure. Yeah, yeah.
into it. Like I know, like I'm a Libra
Right.
and stuff like that, and it's really what the phases of the moon or something that is really fascinating to me, and what position they're
Yeah,
in the sky, and the fact that there's 12 zodiac signs in the 12 months, and
yeah,
the base six mathematics that oh god that created like the people that created like our modern clock.
mm,
um oh god, I'm having a brain fart moment though.
that's fine.
Um the ancient um peoples, they had a base six mathematics. Oh god, they're like pre Egyptian.
Okay.
um do you know, do you have any idea?
No,
The
I actually don't know this. Yeah, you know more than me about this. I mean, I don't know, like, are we
okay.
talking the Zoroastrians or, or,
No, no, more like
no, like
they were
Aztec?
they were a specific. God, I can't. That's so embarrassing.
Oh, no, 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 it's fine.
Um,
There's so
uh,
hard to bring all this stuff to mind at will. I know the feeling. Um,
uh, um, it's right on the tip of my tongue. Also, um, but yeah. So I think it's like the way that cuneiform tablets came
tablets, yeah,
from.
yeah, I've heard of that.
Um, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So that gets into like the whole Zechariah Sitchin thing,
These are
and
all words that are
yeah,
floating in my head. I'm gonna have to do a bit of a dive on that, but I'll check it out when we're offline. But
right,
um, yeah.
right.
But so you have,
But
yeah,
yeah, it's something I paid attention to.
yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't put like a ton of weight into it. Yeah.
Well, I had an experience where so our birth chart astrology, which is a little bit, it's more finely tuned than just like your sign. It also it so you have a birth chart based on your date of birth, your time of birth, and your geographical location. And I would need to look into it more to know why all that's pertinent. But at any rate, somebody I was talking to about astrology just very casually, kind of in the same vein as you, like, open to it, but not putting a lot of weight on it, sent me pictures from a book that had basically personality descriptions based on your birth chart. And it must have been a pretty thick book because there's all kinds of, you know, there's all kinds of potential, like the the potential descriptions of personalities and the resonances are sort of exponentially more than just the signs, which have always been a little bit like low, um, kind of like low resolution to me. And I'm also a Virgo, but I'm on the cusp at the end of Virgo, so I'm a cusp Virgo. So when I hear descriptions of Virgos, like often they're really, really not like me. But this one book, it was another time that I had um, a reaction to something that sort of like like dreams and things, where it was completely personal because it resonated so strongly that I was weeping reading this book. It was describing me, and it was describing things that no one has ever articulated about me, that like I don't think anyone has ever articulated about me, but that have been intuitions about myself. And then I would laugh, like I was laughing and I was crying and all this stuff. I was like, holy cow. So ever since then, astrology has not been off the table for me. Like I'm still a complete noob at it. But anyway, I only mention astrology because of the obvious tie-in with the planets that these beings were kind of uh, showing to you as a comparison to their way of thinking. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, for what it's worth. So you might want to look up, you might want to check out birth chart astrology. You can get your birth chart free on different places online too. I mean, the actual physical birth chart is probably meaningless because it's meaningless to me. It's sort of a circle with the signs and lines going through it. I don't understand it, but then if you can get a little description of it, it might be something that's interesting. Like it definitely, like for me, it identified a sort of a life calling towards some kind of leadership, which no one has ever said to me out loud, but that has really I have been feeling. And that kind of thing. So yeah, see, we've been going for a while here, and I don't want to make you stay up super late.
Oh
Uh,
wow, yeah, I didn't realize
Sorry,
what
uh,
time it was. Yeah.
so I'll just say, like from my perspective, like I really honor um, I honor the fact that you or talked about it. I think it's like a brave thing to talk about. I mean, it's probably embarrassing to even say that, but like how people can be really skeptical about these things, and so I'm honored that you talked to me. I found it really resonant, and I kind of hope we can keep up with it a little bit. Uh, if there's anything else that comes to your mind, because I feel kind of invested now, as I said. But no, there's no responsibility to me on your part. Just putting that out there. And I guess, is there anything that came to your mind that you felt was important that you'd want to say before we kind of like sign off?
No, not in particular. This was really interesting though, and it helped me a lot. Just kind of think through it. Um, one thing that I have found really interesting. I've explained it to a few people, and so far everybody's taken me pretty seriously.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah, it's kind of shocking because I know exactly how it sounds. Like yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting. Um, but this has been really helpful. Kind of helped me articulate it a little bit more than I have previously.
Awesome.
And I would like to talk with you again. Maybe I'll go over like the other dreams I had when I went through like my religious experience back in the day or
Oh,
something
that'd
like
be
that.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, those are really powerful.
I would love to hear about that. Like, I'm fascinated by this stuff, and I think it's something that people like. I understand why people keep them private, and I actually think to a certain degree they should be private. But I also think like you mentioned John Vervaeke, so clearly you know about the concept of dialogos, right? That he talks about, and I
Hmm.
think that's so important. And I think it's a completely different thing, if to tell someone these things when in the context of dialogos, like someone, if you feel that that's possible with me, and I think it's something that I strive to do, then I think those things can be very powerful to tell. So yeah, yeah, let's do that sometime. Like I said, like I recorded this. Like it's nothing like an episode of my podcast that I've ever done. So I don't know if I would even put it anywhere. And you have the right to say no to that as well. I have to think about it. Like I don't know if it's something that should be private. At the same time, I do have this feeling that um, as the world is kind of waking up to a less materialistic mindset, um, I would like to be a part of these conversations in a public way. It doesn't have to be this one, but I kind of think it's one of those things. It's like, hey, here's a fellow human being, and we're people have these experiences, and it has to be there has to be less stigma about it. So I'm very encouraged that you have not encountered a bunch of pushback. You probably will at some point if you keep talking,
I'm
but
sure. Yeah.
yeah, but I think if you know a few people are in your corner, that helps a lot for just the sanity check kind of thing.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm. And and like you said at the start, it was like a dream state type thing. Like I'm sure 90% of people just chalk it up to I had a dream. Um,
right.
and and like it makes sense.
Yeah,
That's a way for people to make sense of it. And it's very likely that I had slipped into a type of dream state, when I
yeah,
was laying there, and yeah, and but I don't know, it felt a lot more to me. It felt very powerful,
yeah,
and the fact that I found out that the planets were aligning after the fact
yeah,
really kind of just like almost messed with me a little bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like honestly,
yeah.
yeah.
I can understand that. I've had like lesser versions of the same thing where something was like really kind of resonant, and it's like whoa, like it gives you that those chills or whatever, and like I don't know. I think yeah. I mean, it's akin to a dream state, but you know, I want people to take these things seriously in their own lives because I think, as I was kind of implying before, um, one of the things that's very difficult to um, feel in the modern age is the personal quality of these things. So whether it's a dream and or a synchronicity, or an experience of God, or whatever it is. None of these things are primarily proofs of something. Like, they are experiences in and of themselves, and they are connections between yourself and a greater reality, whatever that is. And so the word real, to me, the word real very much applies to them, right? And the difference between the tone of a dream. I've had dreams, honestly, like I've had like sex dreams about people, uh, and woken up and been like, I knew immediately this is not an important dream. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm all of a sudden in turmoil, that I've had this dream about someone I know or whatever. Um, you know, your impression is a big part of it. Your presence there, your consciousness is a big part of the reality of what you experienced. In other words, it is not a pass fail uh, situation. Like, this either was an important thing that should be true for every person who hears it, or it was total bullshit. Like, and
Right.
so that's the way that I am increasingly inclined to think, and I feel like the way that my life is pushing me. So I just thought I'd say that, um, so that the reality of it, of your experience, is um, undeniable, and that um, your thoughts, your impressions of it, and your feelings of it are a part of its reality, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I would give them a
that
lot. I would
that
give them
also
more
helps.
weight.
Yeah.
I would give them more weight than we've been encouraged to give those things, right? The scientific mindset, which, like, science
Yeah.
is wonderful, but the scientific mindset is that your impressions of it are actually the most questionable thing, right? Like, it was either
Right.
real or it wasn't real, and your feelings are not a part of it. And I think that is just the spiritual paradigm just has no room for that kind
Yeah.
of thinking. That's just not how it works. Like, so anyway, I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and you can post this if you want. I don't really care either
Okay,
way. I'll leave it up to you. Yeah.
I'll think about it, and if
This
I
is a
do,
really good conversation.
oh, thank you.
I enjoyed
Likewise,
talking with you. Yeah.
likewise, and like, I think, I always beat myself up for talking too much in these things. I know it's your story, so anyway, I appreciate you putting up with my ranting, and I'll let you get back to your kids. I'll let you know if I'm going to publish it, and if I do, I'll put some kind of like I'll put like a little opening explainer saying, like, this isn't like my normal like my normal podcasts, and why I would post it, kind of thing, just to give a little context. But then I'll kind of let your story speak for itself.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good night. It was nice
Yeah.
to meet you in person. I actually like meeting my Twitter friends. I've done it a couple times. I met Luke. Luke. Do you know Luke Thompson?
I've seen him on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, met him that way. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right. Have a good night.
Okay.
Talk to you
Cool.
soon.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye,
Yeah.
Matthew.